Good evening. The time is 6:03 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, September 12th, 2024. This is the Public Safety Commission meeting for the City of Desert Hot Springs. And could we have a roll call? Mr. Clerk.
Commissioner Lozano? Here. Commissioner Martin Mitchell is absent. Commissioner Rizzio?
Present.
Vice Chair Cross?
Present.
And Chairman Kenneth Mitchell.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Risso, would you be so kind to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you, Commissioner Russo. All right. We do have business upcoming in the interim. Has everyone had a chance to peruse the agenda?
Yep.
We have? Okay. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
All motion.
Okay, motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, motion and second. If there is no further discussion, please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. I don't see the minutes up for this meeting.
That is correct. They'll be on for the next meeting.
They'll be up for the next meeting? Okay, so we do not have to ask for an approval of the minutes. We do have members in the gallery, so I will go ahead and read the admonishment for public comments at this time. At this time, pursuant to the Brown Act, any person may comment on matters of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Public Safety Commission that is not listed on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Public Safety Commission should not take action on or discuss matters raised during public comment portion of the agenda that are not listed on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers may not yield their time to others without the consent of the chair. All comments are to be directed to the Public Safety Commission and shall be devoid of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during public comments. Please complete and submit a speaker card to the city clerk. You will be asked to state your name and city of residence for the record. Okay. The city clerk has delivered to me 2 speakers. I'm going to begin, if there is a gentleman, Terrence Harris. If you would step forward to the podium, please. The microphone has been activated. I can see the red light there. Sir, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Terrence Harris. I am a 2-year resident here of Desert Hot Springs. My wife was telling me about the homelessness, things that we're going to do to try to get rid of some of these homeless people that are just lingering around here. They told me about Mr. Tyler here, so I will hope to get your contact information once we're done with this. And I had seen around like the LA, like the Los Angeles area, they do like I've seen a lot of like people hanging around like the bus stops. So they do have leaning rails instead of like seats there. I know it gets kind of hot. I don't know if the overhang could still exist, but as far as the leaning rails, I think it would stop like a lot of people just hanging out or gathering at the bus stops. Just a quick comment on that. And for like my DHS app, I love that. I do use it. So, yeah, other than that, thank you guys for your time, definitely.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you.
We have another speaker. I'm going to say Lisa Lundy. I hope I said that right. You know, it was okay.
Irish.
Thank you for stepping forward. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I am a property investor here, so I own investment property, and then also I just recently built a house in the last 12 months, and so I've been down here more often. And I would like to commend the city because in the last 6 years, a lot has been done. But I have a heightened concern about the loitering and the homeless. I'm not comfortable. A lot of our neighbors are not comfortable. I have left LA and have driven down here and had to call the police department, and thank you guys, you were at my house in minutes. But not only myself, but a lot of my neighbors, we have had our properties actually invaded. Like, we come and there's transients in our yards. One transient was actually in my house. And so this is not okay. The bus stops are loaded. We were driving by and I saw some people actually cooking up some drugs at the bus stop at Vaughn's. And I am a mom of 8. My kids are with me. They're witnessing this. My second experience inside a Vaughn's supermarket, I have my little kids with me. My 6-year-old was knocked over by a transient stealing Red Bull, a big case of Red Bull. He was running out the store and knocked my kid over. But it was like nothing, like it's like normalized because you have like 10 of them standing outside in front of Vaughn's. Can we do something about the loitering? I was in the driveway of Starbucks the other day, and there's like 10 people gathered. I have pictures, just gathered like a camp. If there's places where they can go, then why are they allowed to just loiter in these places? Like if you go even to Taco Bell, it's crazy. McDonald's, where it's supposed to be a happy place for kids. I mean, there's so many baskets parked in front. And then the other day I was coming out of Starbucks, and undercover police pulled up at a homeless person, says, you know, are you such and such? Here, we have a bus pass for you. And so, like, what is being done? And more, and we could do better. Because when people think of DHS, they always say, it's a nice city. You're surrounded by the mountains. You have the springs at Desert Hot Springs. But wow, it's a bad city. That's what they say at the end. And I would like to see if somehow in the future we can get rid of that last sentence, like it's a bad city. Because it's not. It's actually a lot of great people here. So thank you very much. Hopefully we can get some stuff done as far as the loitering, because I know we have a lot of new development. I'm sorry, my time is out. But it seems like the homeless are catching up with the development, and that's a problem. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. At this time, I'm going to reiterate the admonishment. We do have on the agenda, homelessness is being addressed. And for public comments are to be addressed things that are not on the agenda. So I understand there's a tremendous public interest in this fact, which is why I'm not going to come down too hard on people if they want to go ahead and speak their mind. But we do have a procedure that we must follow, you know. And the interest is for us to be transparent in all of our dealings with the public. We want the public to know everything. So if there was something not on the agenda, that would be fine. The comments we make, we'll consider this a comment on loitering on that issue, since that's not on the agenda. And we'll go ahead and go to the next speaker. Understanding that Sandra Munoz, you're the next person up to speak.
My name is Sandra Munoz. I am homeless here in Desert Hot Springs, and I apologize for this. I just want to commend the DHS Police Department. They are very, very, very active, along with code enforcement, on working on the homeless problem. I've been homeless here 4 years, I believe it is. 5 years in Riverside County, 11 years total, Mendocino County and San Bernardino County. We're given enough opportunity to get ourselves, pick ourselves up, but you got to go and you got to do this. You have to do the legwork, okay? DHSPD has actually been very, very lenient on the homeless, okay? And as for you guys with property, tell a homeless person about it, we'll police our own, Save these guys the time. There is a lot of loitering. It has cut down, I would say, tremendously in the past 3-4 months. They're very, very active. They do have one officer in the Bond Center at all times. I believe you guys are in Stater Brothers and Bond Center at all times. Code enforcement is. It's the outline. What I suggest to anybody that's dealing with the homeless, I had to run a guy and threaten to do whatever in Starbucks the other day. Okay? You're going to act polite. We're human. Okay? I've worked for this city twice. Last time was in 2001. I got him out of a grand jury indictment. Now I'm a homeless person. Okay? Everything happens for a reason. There's a reason for everything that happens. Okay? I don't like it. My camp was just caught on fire, and I was kicked in the leg by steel-toed boots by a homeless person the other day, and I'm homeless. So I understand the public's interest in this. Police department is so inundated with calls. I try to go up and talk to an officer, and I can't even get them because they're out and they're doing other stuff and other stuff and other stuff. They're very, very proactive in what's going on in the town, okay? So please don't say your police department's not doing anything. They're doing everything possible. What I think is get a homeless coalition. I'd be willing to head it. And what I tell businesses, take a picture of the jerk that's doing it. You can excuse my language if I get out of hand because I'm really tired and really upset. Take a picture of them, show it to me next time I come into your business, and we'll handle it. And then if we can't handle it, we go the next level up. We go to the police department. So that's the best. I know there are at least 15 camps that are up for being taken down, 4 of them up Palm and 5 of them down Hacienda. That's what I was informed of. I just need to see pictures of those camps. I'll tell those people, move along. Some of them are not the regular ones that have been here the whole time. I've been here continual for over 4 years. Actually, it's 4 years this month. Full moon in October, remember? No, December 25th. I've been dealing with Tyler since I got here. We've gone through a lot. We've gone through a lot. So, we are dealing with finding, people that are dead. The homeless are allowing the other homeless to die, and they're not doing a damn thing about it, and that's what pisses me off. I just had a friend of mine, Richard Segala Jr., was just found dead 3 or 4 days ago, literally half a block away from my camp. Okay, that man had a caregiver. I went over to talk to that caregiver today, so supposedly he's not around. Well, good. Get out of the D because we're not going to accept it. I cannot bring that guy back to life. He was a good man. He was a very, very good man. Got shot in the head, shot through an eye. Yeah, he did what he did, but he was a very kind man. Anybody that will allow their friends to walk out in this heat. I had a situation, I overheated. I couldn't get anybody to call 911. They had no officers available. I went ahead and I started walking. This gentleman let me use the phone. Somehow CHP got in and they were going, are you having a heart attack? And I says, no, I need an ambulance. I'm overheating. And they're going, ma'am, are you having a heart attack or an anxiety? And I says, yes, now I am. They had to pull the sergeant on duty, Sergeant Elias, off whatever he was doing that was a heck of a lot more important than me overheating to come down to make sure I was okay. That's BS, okay? We should be able to handle our own situation. It's been ridiculously hot. I lived in desert since 1972 up in the high desert. So I see my time's running out. Give them a chance. Give us a chance. Let's get a homeless coalition going. I'll go clean these camps out for you. I'll do it one way or another.
All right, thank you, Ms. Munoz. Yeah, the clock started a little late, so we're going to go ahead, and that's not your fault. So thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the gallery? I don't have any more speaker cards. That concludes what was turned in. I see no one coming forth. I'm going to go ahead and close the public comments at this time. The next on the agenda is a homelessness update, which is a staff presentation on current efforts to address homelessness. And I would like to turn it over to our staff to elucidate on exactly what they're doing.
So I'm going to start off, thank you, first of all, to the Public Safety Commission. I'm going to start off with a giant apology. As Murphy's Law would have it, our PowerPoint presentation that we have worked on ad nauseum since our last meeting is pulling shenanigans tonight. So you're going to get it orally via me. We can always send the PowerPoint presentation to you all next week so you guys can have it in its full form. And hopefully I don't forget any. It was really to keep me in line so I don't talk forever. So first I'm going to kind of start with a background, and then we'll just kind of go into everything. The whole idea following the last meeting was that we provide a real comprehensive overview on all of the efforts that have been undertaken with respect to the issues that the entire city is facing as it relates to homelessness and the community is facing. And I want to also start by just making a note that, you know, a lot of us that work on staff here, we live here too. I live here, I'm born and raised here. Christina lives here, Tyler lives here. This is our community, so we also are in the same plight with all of you. You know, we want our families to be able to go to the grocery store without having the issues that we're seeing. So we are definitely open ears and all in to assist with this matter. So with that said, let's kind of start with a little bit of a history, legislative history. In 2011, there was an Assembly Bill 109 that was passed by the state legislature. And that bill aimed to reduce state prison populations, which is a good thing, but it does impact us down the line. In 2014, Prop 47 was passed by the California voters, and that changed a large group of felonies to misdemeanors. In 2016, Proposition 57 was passed by the California voters, and that changed the status of several crimes from violent to nonviolent. And then in 2019, there was a Supreme Court ruling called Martin versus Boise. What Martin versus Boise actually did was it alleged, and it went to the Ninth Circuit Court, and it alleged that it was cruel and unusual punishment for cities, local jurisdictions, to enforce their anti-camping ordinances. And that made its way all the way through the court system, and the Ninth Circuit Court agreed with that assertion, that it was cruel and unusual punishment for cities to enforce. And that left all of cities, Desert Hot Springs included, in a predicament where we could no longer enforce anti-camping ordinances in public right-of-way. Shortly after that ruling is when COVID hit, and we all know what happened during COVID. And so since that time, as everybody has rightly talked about here, there has been a massive increase in the unhoused population for various reasons, not just in Desert Hot Springs, not just in California, but all over the country. So in recent years, as I just talked about, there's been a massive increase in the number of unhoused individuals in the city of Desert Hot Springs, the county, and the state of California. Each year, Riverside County staff, along with city staff and volunteers from each city, complete what's known as a point-in-time count of the unhoused individuals in each city and the entire Riverside County. Although the numbers are just estimates, the total numbers from each year attest that there has been a rise in the unhoused population in the entire Riverside County. Just in Desert Hot Springs alone, we saw 100% increase, over 100% increase between our numbers from 2018 to 2023 when the last point-in-time count took place. So we went from 58 documented unhoused individuals in 2018 to 122 individuals in 2023. And the reality is we actually know that number is much higher because it is just a snapshot in time, and we are not counting every individual. So in an effort to identify the needs of the unhoused individuals and of our community as a whole, the city completed an independent assessment in 2022, the end of 2022. We met with various other agencies and cities and reviewed and evaluated our current programs. We hired SEE Consulting, who completed a citywide outreach endeavor, which included a needs assessment analysis in the field with the unhoused population. Field reconnaissance was conducted, and these results were presented at 3 separate public meetings that were held at the Desert Hot Springs Library in the fall of that year. Those meetings presented data and allowed all residents to submit any comments and provide feedback on the specific issues. And really what we were trying to ascertain from the community is what did they want to see the staff make a recommendation to council to do. Overwhelmingly, there was a response that something needed to be done. And there was a large response and, quite frankly, a need at that time, because I'm going to go back to Martin versus Boise for a minute. Martin versus Boise said cities cannot enforce their anti-camping ordinances unless they did one thing, and that was provide resources, enough shelter beds for the unhoused population. And Desert Hot Springs didn't have that. So when we conducted all of this community outreach, overwhelmingly the community said, well, we can't do nothing. We need to move forward with providing something so that we can enforce our local ordinances. And so with all of that being said, that's exactly what took place. Staff did eventually bring that recommendation forward to council. In addition to that contract, the outreach that we did, staff also met with other staff and nonprofits, other jurisdictions, specifically Lake Elsinore, Alameda. We discussed their unhoused programs and services, their past efforts, their funding sources, and we toured many different facilities in that time frame. In May of 2023, we identified the hub, which everyone knows is the hub now, on Hacienda. And saw that that was actually a really ideal location because the facility itself, I call it a facility, the location itself had already been entitled for a use similar to what it's being used for today, which means that we can expedite opening there in that location. During that same month, we also started meeting with other nonprofits. Specifically, we met with Martha's Village and Kitchen to discuss the programs and services that they offer in general and at various locations throughout the Coachella Valley. On May 2nd of 2023, the city purchased that property at 66753 Hacienda. It's centrally located, close proximity to many city services and resources, and as I said, it was already entitled for that use. So in an effort to comply with Martin versus Boise, the endeavor was approached to open the hub at that location, and that's what's been transpiring ever since. And that did give us the ability to start enforcement measures, which was a good thing. And so the city actually staffed up with our code enforcement team, and I'm going to get to how we beefed that up a little bit more later. But we were finally in a position where we could start providing resources and then moving forward. Now, the city still had to be very, very careful because there was a lot of legal challenges going through the court system with respect to Martin versus Boise, grants passed, so on and so forth. And that happened for about a year. In the summer of this year, that case made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court actually overturned Martin versus Boise and grants pass. And so the city is now in a very different position in terms of what we can do to enforce. So now I'm going to that was the hub. So I'm going to now talk about where we sit today with respect to our enforcement measures, our enforcement posture. So we have an in-house set team. It's a special enforcement team that has been put together. And so we have a dedicated officer from the police department. We also have dedicated staff from code enforcement. We have 2 dedicated staff members from code enforcement that just do nothing but work on addressing this issue. But I don't want that to leave anybody with the notion or thought that it's just 3 staff members that are working on this issue, because that would not be the case. So Tyler is a full-time code enforcement supervisor, but probably about 60 to 70% of his time is also spent addressing this issue. So with our dedicated law enforcement officer, he is out there for his entire shift doing nothing but stronger enforcement measures with the unhoused population. And this approach, I'm going to be just super candid. I don't know how to be anything but that. Most of you guys know me and know that. It's not something that the city, that law enforcement, that code enforcement can do alone. It really is a community effort that has to take place. And so I say that specifically to talk about the business community and our residents and the assistance that we really need to get to have some of these results that we all want to see. So myself, Christina, her staff, we have spent a tremendous amount of time over the last year going out, meeting with our business community, most specifically our shopping center owners, and talking with them about things that they can do and should do to secure their property. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, the responsibility of the private business owners to secure their property. Law enforcement is there as a tool, But law enforcement has 34,000 residents that they need to be able to respond to at a moment's notice if they get a call for service. And so if they're spending all of their time in these shopping centers, that is not in the best interest of the community as a whole. And so we have taken some pretty strong enforcement measures against our shopping center property owners, and making those strong recommendations that they need to hire adequate security. They need to do everything that they can to abate the issues that make those shopping centers an attractive location for folks to go in and be at. Because at the end of the day, there are now resources there for folks. They can go to the hub, they can get assistance, they can get food, they can get clothing. But if it's readily available for them in a shopping center, that is going to always be, I think, the low barrier location for people to go. We have continued to be strong in those enforcement measures, and we will continue to be strong in those enforcement measures. So that's on the business side. We also have a plea that we want to put out to our residents, and these signs actually were created back in 2016. I'm going to kind of hold them up this way. So it says, per Desert Hot Springs Municipal Code, Section 9.08.340, panhandling is prohibited. Want to help, give to charities. No to panhandlers. When you give to panhandlers, you hurt small business owners in the center. Make real difference, give to a charity where food, clothing, and help is available. And this is crucial for us because we can put all of the resources in one central location for folks to go to, but if they're able to get a couple bucks here and a couple bucks there, there's not going to be this incentive to go to the hub to get those resources. A lot of the concern that we're seeing is the panhandling concern from the community outside of the stores, in the middle of the medians. That's a huge issue. I always worry I'm going to hit somebody when I'm driving down the road. And so I know this sounds silly, but I'm actually going to read a do and a don't for those that may be watching on ways that our community can assist us here. Do respond to solicitation requests with a firm no. You might think you're helping, but it really is much more compassionate to recommend that they go to the resources that are truly there. Do report illegal activity by calling 911 or non-emergency law enforcement. Do treat homeless with respect and dignity. And I'm going to point out, being homeless is not a crime, and I want to stress that. It's not a crime to be homeless. It is a crime to commit crimes. It is a crime to commit crimes, and we are having tougher enforcement on that, but it is not a crime to be homeless, and we do want everyone to understand, and Sandra said this earlier, they are human beings, and they should be treated with respect and dignity. Do offer homelessness information so that they can get help. There are resources. There's the hub. There's Coachella Valley Rescue Mission, Food Now. There's all sorts of resources. We have some cards here that we hand out to people that have a whole list of resources. Do volunteer or donate to organizations that help the homeless. Do be part of the solution by practicing what we call responsible compassion, which is, again, directing to resources. Do not ever give anybody a ride or your address. Don't allow camping or loitering on your property. That is a major issue that we are having right now. We're actually getting reports from some of our residents that there's people that are squatting in homes, and when we go out to those homes, we're finding out that they actually have permission to be there by some of the property managers, and that is creating a nuisance in those neighborhoods, and there's nothing that law enforcement can do in those situations. And then again, don't assume that you're making a difference when you're giving. You may actually be hurting, not helping. So I really can't stress this enough. So anyway, these posters were created in 2016. It's a poster. I get it. It's not actionable. But seeing these messages does help. And any time that a business owner can discourage panhandling in their shopping center, if they have the proper security to do so, it helps our law enforcement out significantly because they are not the security for private business owners who are making a profit in our community. In 2023, we dusted these off because we saw it was continuing to grow. The issue was continuing to grow. And so economic development partnered with our business community. They boots on the ground to get this out in every business. Our code enforcement staff is still out there deploying them to this day, and we have stacks of these here in City Hall for anybody that wants them. We hand these out multiple times a week. So this is something that I really want to hit on because it is a major concern that we all have in this community. Moving along, and that PowerPoint was going to keep me on track, so I'm sorry. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, guys. And I kind of said this, but I do want to talk about this in relation to panhandling because it is prohibited. We do want people to call if it's happening, but I also want to hit on a couple of things. Calls for service are prioritized. So when you call for service to the police department, it's going to be prioritized based on the type of crime. So trespassing and homeless related calls sometimes may rank as a much lower priority depending on the call volume that's taking place at PD and the staffing levels that's within PD. That's where this dedicated set team, though, comes into play. And I'm going to talk about that in much more detail in just a little bit, this dedicated set team, because our goal was that we would have a dedicated set team that can be dispatched out for these types of calls so that law enforcement isn't having to juggle whether or not they respond or have the time to respond to those types of calls. So all calls, I know that I've actually was talking to a business this morning who said, well, we call and PD doesn't show up. I want people to know that if you want PD to make contact, make sure you specify that, because if they're getting called out, particularly for an issue related to panhandling or trespass or something like that, they're generally going to go straight to the location that is being reported. They are not necessarily going to circle back and make contact with the individual that placed that call. So in the instance that we got calls on, I was able to actually verify with the chief that yes, they did go out. They did not make contact though with the reporting party. So calls to dispatch are sent out to the officers, and again, they're handled based on priority and availability. The next question that I always get is, well, why weren't they arrested? Well, there's factors that are going to determine that as well. So not all calls for service are going to result in an arrest or jail time. So there are several key factors that are used in determining whether an arrest is going to take place. One is, has an actual crime been committed? What are the needs in the community at that time based on call volume? Are there any outstanding warrants? That may play into it. And a big thing that comes into play is whether or not it really is a medical or behavioral health concern that has prompted some of the behavior that led to the call. And if that's the case, then we actually have partners that we work with, that law enforcement works with. We have mobile crisis units that get called out to assist with those matters as well. I'm really disappointed because I had a great section on trespass in 602, so I'm going to actually ask the DC and the chief to help me here. But I want to circle back really quick to whether a crime has been committed, because and then kind of talk a little bit about the trespass out in the community. So when we have, and I'm not picking on the Vaughn Shopping Center, but I work a lot with Chris at the Vaughn Shopping Center, the property manager, and I think we've got this down to a science now, so I'm going to talk about how we work with him. So down at the Vaughn Shopping Center, they get a number of concerns over there with respect to trespass. And so there's something called a 602 letter, and businesses and private property owners, residential property owners, can get a 602 letter on file for their business. But in order for a police department to quote unquote trespass somebody from a location, there's a couple of things that have to take place up front. One is there needs to be a valid 602 letter on file with the police department. There also needs to be posted signs at the location notifying folks that that there is that on file and referencing the proper penal code. And then the person that is being trespassed has to be warned that they are not supposed to be there, and if PD is called back to the scene, they can be arrested for trespass. So there's several things that have to take place, and if I missed anything, you guys, did I get it? Okay, good. And so at this point, at the Vaughn Shopping Center, there's a running list. There's a running list of folks that can be trespassed, and with our set team and our officer, this is all part of his rotation now. He has very specific locations throughout the community that he goes to on his shift, multiple times a shift sometimes. And so if all of those factors are in place, the letter's in place, the signage is up, and those people know they're not supposed to be there, and they show up, they absolutely can. And I will tell you, we are arresting individuals at this point. Again, there are resources available. So if folks don't want to take those resources, they are not going to be allowed to continue to terrorize the community. Now, I want to talk about the SET team a little bit in detail. So our SET team is comprised of one dedicated law enforcement officer. We have a dedicated code enforcement staff member, and then we have a dedicated compliance maintenance technician. And so this team works together, and again, the whole idea is that it would relieve the police department and our code enforcement staff as a whole from going and addressing these issues. It is in its infancy. I'm going to be really upfront about that. It is in its infancy. And so we have 2 of those 3 positions staffed. We're working on staffing the last position now, onboarding that person. And so once this is implemented, you will, I think, see I think we're already seeing some improvement in the main thoroughfares, but you will see very dramatic improvement in the main thoroughfares. So their priority areas are going to be in the main thoroughfares of the city, any high frequent areas, the parks, Palm Drive, any location where we're going to have our families and our residents. But they're also available, so when those calls for service come in, they are going to be the team that's going to be dispatched out there. Officer Estrada is already out there, and we're being strategic in how his shifts are scheduled right now. So he spent a couple of months on the day shift. He's now on night shift. So we're rotating because folks learn that if you're there on the day shift, you're only there on the day shift. And so we were starting to see some increased activity at night in some of these locations. And so he's on night shift now. With that being said, just because there's a SET team doesn't mean that our other law enforcement officers aren't all hands on deck on this, or code enforcement. They are all hands on deck on this. So it really is a holistic approach. I'm going to talk a little bit more because I want to make sure I hit all these points. Because I kind of let off on, we had Martha come in, open the hub. We've got the dedicated SET team. But Desert Hot Springs as a whole, since these endeavors have taken place, has committed over $2 million for the acquisition, operation of the hub, for all of these staffing efforts. And for a little city like ours, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. We also have, I don't want to forget this. So in addition to everything that I just talked about, we also have an internal team. We meet weekly, and one of the big things that we are hearing from our residents is the issue of encampments in the neighborhoods, next to businesses, on these private properties that have 602 levels in place. And so there's been a very strong partnership that our staff has taken with property owners to obtain probably hundreds of 602 letters at this point. Tyler, would that be an over-exaggeration?
Maybe not hundreds with an S.
100?
Just, yeah.
100, okay, 100. But that's a lot. That's a lot of 602 letters. And in the last 5 months, we have worked very strategically to try to abate some of these very large encampments. In the last 5 months, there's been over 35 large encampment cleanups that the city has done in tandem with private property owners. And if you kind of break that down, that's almost 2 a week. It's a lot. It's a lot. And that is for large encampments. This is not the day-to-day stuff that our staff is out there doing. These are large encampments. So that's about 2 a week. On average, it's 1.8 a week. I did the math earlier. It's 1.8 a week. But, and I had some great photos to show you, but those efforts are being taken constantly. So if I think you said you had some concern in your neighborhood, please reach out to us and let us know. We would love to understand where that location is so we can work with the private property owner that's in your neighborhood, whatever we need to do to try to jump on this issue. In addition to that, we are also partnering with other outside groups to provide resources. And the resources are important, and I'm going to kind of explain this. Part of assisting this community is building trust with this community so that they are willing to come and accept the services that we have for them. And so we have several individuals that have no desire to go into the hub. And I don't know that they're ever going to want to step foot in the hub. I just don't know that they are. Every third Wednesday of the month, there is a mobile healthcare clinic that is held at the hub. We have many partner agencies that are involved in that. So Desert Healthcare District is involved. We have DAP is involved, Borrego Health. We have mobile showers that come in. And all of that really was spearheaded by one of our local nonprofits, the Bridge to Better Project. And these are residents in this community that really want to help and make a difference. And so that takes place every third Wednesday of every month. It happens at the hub, and it is an opportunity to provide resources, yes, but also an opportunity, and staff is there, for us to build trust with that community, to connect them up with resources that we hope at one point that will be the day that they come in and they say, okay, I'm ready for rehab, I'm ready for assistance, whatever that may be. We are also moving forward with a paradigm shift in how we're going to be tackling this issue moving forward. And so council has provided us some feedback in how they want to see our posture moving forward. And with everything that we have put in place in terms of resources, they're ready for a much stronger enforcement posture so that the rest of our members of our community can feel safe in their community. And so, as I said, we are doing the last hiring of the last individual that will round out this set team, and we want to know where those issues are so we can be out there and taking care of these issues. We are making arrests. Like I said, it is not a crime to be homeless. It is a crime to commit crimes, and the city of Desert Hot Springs is not tolerating that any longer. So I will send you the full presentation. I know I missed some things I really wanted to go over once we get the little bugs worked out of that, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have. We've got a whole team here to do that.
Very well. Thank you, Deputy City Manager Wilms. At this time, and we had a okay, we'll go ahead with the questions from the commissioners.
Hi.
Hi.
I just have a question. At the hub, can you bring clothes and things? Or
So no.
oh,
So the hub is very limited in space. It's very limited in space, and so we want in our community, or it's a giving community, and so we wanted, and the partner that's currently in there, the operator that's currently in there, did not want to risk having one of the entire rooms used up for clothing, because they have thrift stores throughout the valley that folks can donate to, and then they're able to bring clothes in that way. So unfortunately, not currently. That may change if there's an operator shift at the hub, but currently, no. You're welcome.
Anyone else?
So I have one question. I know you were talking about clearing out at encampments, and I know staff is probably very much aware of this because I've seen it come up in reports in regards to fires and things. There's one right on like Hacienda in Tomar.
Yep.
What's kind of the status on that?
Thank you for reminding me, Caden, because that was in my presentation. I'm sorry, Commissioner Cross.
Oh,
sorry
thank
about
you.
that. That was actually in my presentation. So we're getting ready to undertake one of the largest encampment cleanups that I think the city has ever done. And that is the one. So there is, for those that are familiar, between Two Bunch Palms and Hacienda, there is an entire swath of desert there, and there are massive numbers of encampments in that desert. So when we've done census out there, we've counted 26 individuals. I anticipate it's much larger than that. The private property owner of that location has completed all of the 602 letters, has actually started giving notification that these cleanups are occurring, and they are just finalizing the date now, but I anticipate it will be within the next several weeks that we will start to see those encampments get cleaned up.
Okay, that's great to hear. I've gone down there and seen it myself, and I know that that'll be quite a task and will probably take a while, but I'm glad it's on the horizon.
Anyone else? Commissioner Rizzo?
On your homeless response team that you're putting together, what components do you have in that team?
So we have an officer, a police officer, and then we have a code enforcement officer. And the code enforcement officer is really so that they can abate some of the issues that we have with the properties. And so they're on there. And then we have the maintenance technician. It is a compliance maintenance technician, but think of it in terms of like public works duties. So they are going to be assisting with a lot of those encampment cleanups. And this is for the day-to-day stuff. In addition to that, they have other resources that they will pull from. So there's many nonprofits and outside organizations that we work with. As a matter of fact, I'll give an example. Today, just right before this meeting, we had an unhoused individual make his way into our lobby, and he said, "I want to go home. I'm not from here, and I want to go home." And we said, great, we know just the resource. Coachella Valley Rescue Mission was just out here. They actually just did police briefing with our police department, and they said, if you ever have somebody that shows up and says, I want to reunify with my family, all you have to do is call us and we'll get them a bus ticket. And so everybody rallied together. I got on the phone with Officer Elias. He connected us up with the CSO officer who got that gentleman in a car, got him out to Indio. Coachella Valley Rescue Mission came out, and that gentleman is actually on a bus now and on his way home. So it's all about partnerships. So it's going to be all of those different facets, and then if they're not the subject matter expert, so to speak, they will call in one of their partners that will be able to assist.
So they have access to mental health experts and things like that?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Rizzo. I had a couple of questions. First, you brought that up in your presentation. You mentioned the regional effort, because this appears to be not just a Desert Hot Springs issue. This isn't a Nine Cities issue. It's literally not even a county issue. It's a statewide issue.
Right.
You know, we literally have tens of thousands of people that are homeless throughout California. So this is not going to be adequately tackled by any single jurisdiction, and is going to require several handshakes and several agreements. And I was curious about, you mentioned Martha's Village, you mentioned Bridge to Better. Are there any other non-governmental organizations that are participating in this effort?
Yes. So we work, we have partnerships with folks like Jewish Family Services, so they provide the housing component. We also are working with an organization called SWAG. We have a street medicine outreach team, Wealth Equity Alliance. And so they're out here every single day in these encampments providing street medicine. We work with CVAG. We work with Martha's, who you've already mentioned. There's several partner agencies, and I'm on the spot, so I'm not thinking of all of them, and there's all sorts of acronyms, but several faith-based organizations, and those faith-based organizations are really huge partners to us. They're able to meet folks where they are and provide them sometimes with that faith-based stuff that we as a jurisdiction, we can't do. Food Now is another huge partner. So it really is a collaborative effort.
Great. You mentioned the signage that you dusted off, and we're considering putting those back out in businesses and in target areas that you have. If the civilian population were to get involved and they were to come in and pick up some of these signs, where would it be appropriate to place them, and where would it not be appropriate to place them?
So first I want to say these have been deployed, so we're not considering, they're out there. We initiated in 2016, in 2023 we deployed them again, and they've been going out ever since. So they're here, anybody can come in and get them. Really effective in store shopping windows, really effective there. You can put them in your house, but I don't know that you want them in your house window. Really effective, though, in the shopping centers, in business windows, in any place that the public is going to be, and they'll have high visibility. That's where it would be best. We don't want to put them on any street signs or anything like that. Can't be blocking, the this line of sight, but windows of businesses is really effective.
Okay. And you mentioned the security requirements of the private business owners. And we've been perusing, and correct me if my fellow commissioners have been doing quite a bit of research on this issue. There's a delineation with private property and public access. Now, when you talk about the division between the two, is there any delineation as to who is responsible for the security at public access? Because I think there might be a difference. When Vaughn's, for an example, we use Vaughn's as an example for other things. Once you get inside Vaughn's, you're inside the structure, the door's closed behind you. There's a very large security guard. I've made his acquaintance, and he's making sure that the shoppers are safe and everything like that. When you step across the threshold of Vaughn's, now you're in a private parking lot, but you're in a public access area. Does that security requirement is Vaughn's still responsible at that point?
Well, I want to first start, and then I'm going to actually probably kick it to DC. I want to first start by saying that we don't require security. We don't require security. So when I say the requirement is security, I don't mean that they have to have a security guard. What I do mean, though, is as a private property owner, as a private business, there is a responsibility to secure your property by whatever means you choose to do so, right? I can't tell a business how to spend their money. I wouldn't. I can make recommendations, and we do make recommendations. But there is not a requirement for them to hire security. So I want to make that abundantly clear. And then to the public access question, that is not my wheelhouse. I'm going to ask the deputy chief to chime in on that.
Good evening. Yeah, so let's first talk about going inside a private business, walking inside Vaughn's. It is Vaughn's responsibility inside their store, and they have a right to refuse business to anybody that walks inside that store. For the parking lot itself, Vaughn's and the property management, the owners of that property, they have a duty to secure and maintain that property. Yes, the police can still go on there, they can take enforcement action, but there is, as we've been talking about today, there is specific enforcement action that we need them to take steps A, B, and C, and D in order for us to take enforcement action on. That being infraction type offenses, misdemeanor type offenses. Within the parking lot, if a felony occurred, a car break-in or something like that, or an assault, police can go on that property and they can take enforcement action. But for things like misdemeanors like the trespass, those steps of posting it and the notification need to be taken care of first before police can take any type of enforcement action.
All right. Thank you for that explanation. Let's see. Are there any financial sources such as grants that we can use or access? Because you mentioned the overall cost, which is a significant cost for a city of this size, that can assist us in the efforts that we're doing, or may perhaps even lead to their expansion in the near future.
Definitely, and I actually want to mention some resources that the city's actually obtained. I would be remiss actually if I didn't mention that. So with the hub, we were very fortunate to receive a grant from the County of Riverside. It was like $418,000 that we were able to utilize for the operations of the hub, and so that was incredibly helpful. Now, with respect to other grants, there are a number of grants that are out there right now. I will tell you, they come with caveats. One of them in particular that we actually really still want to actively pursue, and that is the encampment grant, because it helps with cleanup of encampment. The biggest challenge that we have is sometimes to go after money, you have to spend money. And that's one of the challenges that prevented us from applying in this latest round is the grant assists with encampment cleanup, which is wonderful. That's what we want to see. It also provides funding for housing those individuals, because you don't want to clean an encampment and have folks have nowhere to go. And that is wonderful as well. The challenge is to manage a grant of that size, because it would be about $6 million that we would ask for. You need to have almost 3 dedicated staff people that can manage the grant, manage the reporting, but then manage the case management, because you have to follow those clients all the way through the process. So you don't just house them and say, okay, we're done. No, you've got to follow them and their success for several years after. And we don't have that capacity right now to hire the staff to staff that. Now, what we are doing is we are working with the county, and we are in discussions with them, and they've basically said, hey, look, let's really talk about this next round, because they may be able to take the lead for us on those efforts so that it wouldn't have to be our staff. So that's what we're looking through right now. We're also particularly excited about some of the other grant funding that's coming down the pike. We don't have full regulations for it quite yet, and that's going to be the Prop 1 funding. And so we're really looking into that. So yes, that's a long-winded way to say yes, Chairman Mitchell. There is grant funding. We are always actively going after it, and we have secured some already.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. And I guess, the length of the presentation will give you a little bit of a break. I'll ask one more question. The hub, which is not pun intended, has been the hub of the discussion that we've had here as dealing with this issue. Now, what is the bed capacity of the hub, and how does that relate to the current homeless census, and how do we attend to deal with the disparity and the difference between the two?
So the capacity right now, the overnight capacity is 26 beds. We have never been at full capacity there. So I will say candidly that we are going to be bringing some recommendations forward to the City Council a little later this fall, and we will be making some recommendations that we actually change the use of that facility. One of the things that the council actually made clear to us when we started down these endeavors is if something isn't working, bring back some recommendations for some changes. And so we've identified some ways that we think that location can be better utilized and actually result in some real marked change in the numbers that we're seeing with our unhoused population. And so currently it is 26 beds, but we will be making some recommendations to modify it potentially from an emergency shelter to a different use that would result in some marked changes down the line for the unhoused population.
Okay, well, I thought that was my last question. I apologize. Yeah, so when a person, we'll just take this as a scenario, a person that is unhoused wants to access the services provided on the hub. In order to do so, they're presented with a set of rules.
Correct.
Okay, so for the sake of argument, what would those rules be?
So actually, the hub has been designed as a very low barrier entry point. So the hub meets folks where they're at. They can't come in with drugs, they can't come in with weapons, but they can go in even if they are actively using. So they do have to abide by basic sets of rules. No violence. They can't have drugs on the premises. They need to abide by curfew. They do have a curfew. And obviously, normal common decency type of rules we're talking about. They do separate male from female. That tends to be something that prevents folks from going there. So I can get you a full listing of the rules. I don't have them memorized, but it's normal rules that you would expect to have. But I will say it is a low barrier facility. So like I said, they cannot go in with drugs, but if they are on drugs, they are not going to necessarily be turned away.
Okay.
Under the current model.
Very well. Thank you for that presentation and for answering all the questions. I'm sure this will not be the one and only conversation that we're going to have on this issue. There are going to be many, You do? Please.
Okay, I'm homeless and I go to the hub and I spend the night. How long can I do that? Can I do this every day, forever?
So let me talk through that. Good question. So right now, the way that it works is folks that want to go and utilize the overnight shelter, they need to arrive between 4 and 5 p.m. So then they get checked in, they have a dinner, and then they're there for the night. They then are woken up between 6 and 7 a.m. and they need to check out. So they do so. Then they flip it over for the day use because there is a day use center there. Those same individuals can turn around and walk right back in, sign in for the day use, and spend their day there. And then at 4 o'clock, they can check out and come right back in and sign in for the overnight. So yes, they can go back and forth. And I'm going to be super candid in saying that's one of the things that we're seeing, which tells us that we've got an issue that's not being addressed, which is leading to these recommendations that we are anticipating bringing forward to the council to make some changes there. Our plan, our goal initially was for very intense case management to occur at that site that would result in progress with some of our community. And that is happening in some occasions, but it's not happening in the numbers that we want to see, which tells us we need to dig deep and do more.
Thank you very much.
I have another question. Regarding the hours and the operation you had mentioned that in the morning they're woke up and then they're sent out of the facility. So where do they go?
So there's different they go out into the street or they go right back in. So, but I'm going to kind of throw a little explanation there. And I've learned a lot about shelters in the last couple of years, I'll tell you that, because I didn't realize how many different types of classifications of a shelter there was. So as an emergency overnight shelter, there are certain quote unquote boxes, right, that get checked for that, and what qualifies as an emergency overnight shelter, what those rules look like, what the standard protocols look like. And the grant that we actually got was for a 26-bed overnight shelter. And so when you are getting a grant and those grants are being facilitated, you need to keep that model. And so they're following those models. So that type of facility, that is the process. That type of facility isn't necessarily working for our needs.
Okay, my other question is I know when the county got involved and they set standards for the homeless shelter, the hub, they call it, they required you guys to allow homeless people from Riverside County to go there, right? Mm-hmm. So now we're bringing in people from Riverside County into Desert Hot Springs, which is already stressed under our homeless situation. So now we have a place for them to go, but then in the morning we're kicking them out into our community. So who has checks and balances from there?
So let me talk about that a little bit. You're absolutely correct that when the city adopted the county model, that is the county model, that they have a process through their coordinated entry system where folks go through what's called a SPDAT process, and then when they basically it kicks out a response like, hey, there's a shelter bed available here for you. And so that's true. If you're receiving monies, you have to be part of that process. Now, with that being said, there is a local preference that cities are able to do. And the city of Desert Hot Springs has never strayed away from that local preference. And Martha's has deployed that local preference at the hub. And so they have initial questions that folks answer when they go to the hub. And one of those questions is, where did you stay last night? And if folks don't answer in Desert Hot Springs, they are not given that local preference. So it is nuanced. Does that mean that we're not seeing folks from other areas? I'm sure that they are absolutely coming in, but that's generally if it's coming through that coordinated entry system.
So there is no accountability for who's coming in there.
So with the current
we don't know geographically where they're coming from.
Right. So they are being questioned. They are being questioned, and we are seeing that most of them are from Desert Hot Springs. But I would not attest today that we're not seeing anybody from any other location coming in there.
Can I make a recommendation?
Absolutely.
That with that facility that maybe you might want to implement rehabilitation stress to the people that come and stay there, and maybe we should get Desert Hot Springs to implement something that they can get involved in during the day to keep them off the streets.
Absolutely.
To where we can get them rehabilitated instead of being a nuisance to us.
I understand exactly what you're saying.
I've been here 25 years, and this is ridiculous.
So
And I really feel sorry for them. I do.
Definitely, and to your point, Commissioner Rizzio, there, like I said, I keep alluding to it, there is a recommendation that's going to be coming forward to council that is going to be making some very strong recommendations based off of our experience in the last year in ways that we think that this facility can be more successful in marked changes and improvements.
So that way we have accountability
Right.
and checks and balances, and we know, what these people are doing throughout the day. At least to a certain percentage,
Absolutely.
and then that'll trickle down into, maybe it'll get to 100%. Who knows? But we have to do something.
Understood.
In that. Thank you for listening to me.
Definitely.
One last question. When they come and go all day, morning, noon, and are they getting fed if they choose to?
Yes. So
I
for-
mean, they don't have to be there at 7, 6:30, 12:30, whatever.
Sorry, thank you for qualifying that way. So yes, there is food. They do have to be there at the time that the food is being served.
Yeah.
So there are designated times that the food is served.
Thank you.
All right, good discussion, I believe. Mr. Clerk, do we have any submitted speaker cards? Anybody more wanted to comment on this presentation? We do not? All right, no speaker cards have been submitted. We'll go ahead and close it. The public speaking part of that at this time. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. Again, we're going to have many discussions on this. It's an evolving, like medicine, like law enforcement, like fire service. It's an evolving science, and mistakes are going to be made. There's going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But it sounds to me that the approach that the city is taking is extensive. There's a lot of thought into it. There's a lot of resources that have been called into it, and I can't see a scenario where there's going to be negative results from it happening. I see nothing but positive
Thank you.
coming out of this. So I thank you for that again. A lot of information was disseminated in this presentation. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to recess for approximately, we'll come back at 20 after the hour and continue with the meeting. So we'll give us all a break. So 7:20. Sure. 1-minute warning to the reconvening of the meeting. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I just mentioned the gavel's like the air horn on a fire truck. It gets everybody's attention at time. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order at this time. One last chance to thank Deputy Manager Doria Willems, Deputy City Manager Doria Willems, for her presentation. The next on the agenda, we're moving to the administrative reports. The first report is code compliance. And that would be Mr. Messer. Thank you.
Good evening, guys. So for August of 2024, code compliance, we did receive 118 service requests, and that resulted in 432 inspections. We issued out 73 notices of violation. We issued 76 citations that totaled $257,800. That number's kind of high. We did issue a little over $100,000 citation to one of the cultivations, so that's why you're seeing that number increase that drastically with 76 citations. Officer Human had a huge success on 2nd Street last month. She was able to bring two different properties into compliance. One of the properties over there was unsecured and red tagged and had a slurry of issues. They had junk trash, a hazardous electrical panel, and in addition to it being red tagged, thankfully Officer Human was able to bring that property into full compliance, and it is no longer red tagged, and I believe that one has been occupied as well. The other one on 2nd Street was a long-standing code case that she had. The previous occupant, or the previous owner, she, after they abandoned it, there was trespassers that came in, littered it full of trash. She sent out multiple notices of violation to that property owner. The property owner eventually informed Officer Human that she was involved in a litigation concerning the property, but on January of 2024, the litigation ended, came to a decision, and so they were able to resume construction. That was a property that was not fully built. It was only about 3/4 of the way built. There was sticks on the outside, no stucco, nothing yet. I did include some photos for you guys to review of that specific property and the condition that it's in today. It has been finalized by building and no longer in a code violation. We were able to close that case. Also in August, we held 2 different revocation hearings. One of them was with Officer Human and myself and the principal planner, Patricia Villagomez. It was regarding a CUP 1516. It was former cultivation under pressure located off of Little Morongo. The business was established in 2016 and was sold to the current owner in 2020. However, the current owner failed to comply with the conditions of approval, which also included some engineering requirements. Ultimately, in that hearing, the hearing officer did uphold the decision, and we were able to successfully revoke that CUP. The other revocation hearing that we had was with myself and Officer Brock. It was for a short-term vacation rental permit. That property was found with multiple violations, including occupancy violations. There was a drowning at that property as well. The hearing officer ultimately upheld the city's decision to go ahead and revoke that permit as well. Officer Human also had a good win over on Calle Escoral. There was some occupants in a building that just let the building go. And they're junk and trash everywhere. They had broken down cars. Ultimately, the bank ended up foreclosing on that property, and after the foreclosure, they were able to take the appropriate actions to clean and address all the outstanding violations. And then our abandoned vehicle officer, Officer Chafin, she was able to tow a El Camino off the public right-of-way. That vehicle was already involved in previous code cases, so she was able to send a 10-day notice to abate to the registered owner. They didn't take any action in the violation, so ultimately that vehicle was towed away by our AVA program. And that's going to conclude my report. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Questions for code compliance?
Is there annual or biannual or monthly or every 3 months inspections for those cultivation facilities that are catching on fire?
So we do have a whole team, our cannabis team, and they do go out there and they inspect randomly. They don't want them to know when they're coming. They want to be able to show up, make sure they have all their security requirements or any other requirements they need to meet, but it is at random.
What normally creates the fire in those facilities?
We haven't had too many fires. What I know of, there's been 2, and typically it's the small fans in there, like small appliances that are
okay.
causing those fires.
Gotcha.
None of them have resulted in any significant damage. The latest one was a small fan inside the corner of the room. It did set off the sprinklers, but other than that, there was no other damages.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I just have one, just a nomenclature question, CUP, cultivation under pressure. And you kind of expand on that a little bit, just what that requirement is?
So when they were issued their CUP, which allows them the authority to operate that cannabis cultivation, it comes with conditions such as public improvements, street improvements, maybe even installing traffic lights. I'm not sure what the exact conditions were for this CUP, but it's a slurry of things that the operator must do in order to maintain that CUP. So if they can't do those improvements that we're requesting of them, then we go through a hearing and revoke the CUP, and that's where ultimately this one ended up.
Okay. And just one more question, and I guess it might manifest itself as an idea. And I see that there was a property that had a recent child drowning. What is the permitting process for someone who owns a property and wishes to install a swimming pool that was not there before? Are you familiar with that? Does that go back to the planning commission or building department?
Are you meaning like just any single family rental or any single family home that wants to install?
Yeah, for the sake of argument, yes.
Yeah, so there's California standards for swimming pool installs, such as they have to have a non-scalable fencing around them. If there's going to be a latch on the exterior fencing, it has to be at least 50 inches above the floor to prevent these child drownings. In our city, when it comes to short-term vacation rentals, we do up those requirements, such as they have to have 2 forms of drowning prevention. One is typically going to be the splash monitor, so if somebody falls into the pool, it alerts an alarm inside the home, letting them know that somebody's inside the pool, that they fell into the pool.
Interesting.
They can put a tarp over it, but it has to be one that's rated with I forget the name of the organization, but California standards for swimming pools.
Has there ever been a suggestion for here in the city of Desert Hot Springs for anyone that has a residential swimming pool to become certified in CPR or to resuscitate someone? And maybe there would be a modicum for a reduction in some of the permit fees if there was someone, the property owner, that was certified in emergency resuscitative procedures and maintained their certification and let code compliance know of that.
So we don't have anything like that, and it's not really a thing that I know about to require a property owner to have a CPR license if they want to, or certificate, if they want to have a swimming pool.
Okay. Listen, they're not required, but if they were to get one and provide you with it and maintain their certification, maybe they would get some relief from some of the fees. But, okay, thank you for that. Thank you for your report. Next up is the monthly report from our animal control.
Yes, sir. So over the couple of months that we were absent, we have taken in 209 dogs. Some of those, 42 were returned to owners, 38 were sent to rescue, 33 were adopted out. 5 of those were sent to CVAC on bite quarantines, which the funds are not taken out of the city. It's to the owners that they get charged to. We've had 84 that were taken to the vet, and those include our surgeries that we do for spays and neuters. We've had 20 that were euthanized, 95 licenses, 64 administrative citations, 73 warning citations, and 851 calls for service over the last couple of months.
Okay, thank you. Questions for animal control?
Right.
Indeed.
So I do also want to mention that on, just to save the date, November the 2nd, we're having a big event in our parking lot at our Hacienda location. We also have about 25 adoption events now that the weather is being, cooperative and getting a little bit cooler. We have 25 adoption events coming up, starting October. We try to do at least 2 or 3 a month on the cooler months.
All right. Great. And what's the location in the western part of town?
North Indian Canyon, 17825 North Indian Canyon.
17825 North
Yes,
Indian
sir.
Canyon, okay.
Just right before the big, what is it, cultivation?
Right before Dillon,
No, right after Dillon.
just south of Dillon.
Just south of Dillon. Okay, all right, on Indian Canyon.
Jalisco's
Tires.
still open?
Jalisco
Jalisco's
Tires.
Okay, now
next to that.
it says, okay.
Yeah.
Now it's registering, all right, perfect. Thank you, and who's your friend?
This is Angus.
Angus, okay.
He's 4 months old.
All right. Well, thanks for making these chambers more handsome. Thank you for that report. Moving right, well, you don't have a fire department representative here. So I don't think we're going to get a fire department report. I'll give us, our commissioners a couple of minutes to peruse the information on the computer. And if they have any questions or anything they want to bring up for discussion, we can discuss it after they've had a chance to look at it. Incidentally, I had the chance to drive by the new fire station that's under construction on the transition from Hacienda to Long Canyon Road. The framing for the structure is actually up. It's actually taking shape. It's a pretty exciting time for the city. It's been long overdue, and we're eagerly waiting its opening. And maybe I'll be well enough to help push the fire apparatus into the bay, as is tradition. But we'll have to see what happens what transpires when that happens. Are there any questions regarding the fire information? No. All right. Well, let us move ahead to the police department monthly report then.
Thank you and good evening. And so you have the stats in front of you for patrol stats and then the crime stats. I'll just briefly go over for the last 3 months since we hadn't been together for a while. So June, July, and August, the police department handled just over 9,300 calls for service, made 206 arrests, and issued 566 citations. And that's for June, July, and August. On the crime stats over those last 3 months, pretty much a reduction in all crime types. I will talk about briefly, though, we did have, unfortunately, in August, we had about a 2.5 week period where we unfortunately saw our first homicide of the year, and then 2 other incidences, so we ended up having 3 homicides that year. Just briefly, we've given out some public information and updates on those, and I'll do that again tonight. In one of the homicides, an arrest was made. In that case, And the 2 other homicides, they are currently active, that the detectives are working. 2 of these homicides were kind of related. There was a homicide, and then there was a memorial, street memorial type service, and unfortunately, the folks that were at that service that were friends or family of that homicide victim, an incident took place, and that 3rd homicide took place. But all 3 of the homicides, there appears to have been some sort of gang or drug nexus. They weren't random events. So one thing we always talk about is if you're involved in that type of activity, unfortunately, worse things can happen. So stay out of that type of activity. But again, those last 2, the detectives are still currently working, and hopefully we'll have some updates on those for you in the near future. In terms of other stuff going on at the police department, I think since we've last talked, we've brought on 3 new police officers to the police department. So we currently have only one vacant opening for officers. And then next week, we're bringing on our final dispatcher. And so our dispatch center will be completely staffed also. So we're looking very good on that. And then, let's see what I have sent in my notes. And then it's coming. The new building is coming. We've been talking about it for a long time. There were some delays. The final plan checks, if you recall, the public safety campus that encompassed Fire Station 37, the police department, and then the new building for the police department. We ended up having to break that up into phases. So phase 1 is coming. It's finishing up in plan check. It should be going out for a proposal here in the next couple of weeks, and we are hoping to break ground at the first part of the year. So I'll keep you posted on that, but it is moving forward. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Questions for Deputy Chief Shaw? Anyone else? Okay.
206 arrests, you say? Big or little, or?
A wide variety. We did a number of different sweeps throughout the summer. A lot of warrant arrests. We've been very active in our trespass and loitering enforcement, so a lot of it been that. So it's been a wide range from misdemeanor to felony crimes. So yeah, kind of a little bit of everything, but very proactive on the officer's part and going out there and doing that.
Good. Thank you.
It shows on the crime statistic reports that the 3 homicides took place in July. And I heard you, and you mentioned earlier that there was one, was there another one in August? Or?
No, I might have misspoke. All 3 of them were in July.
All 3 of them were in July? Okay. And have we made any progress with regards to, we're 1 vacancy short, so I'm presuming that means we have 32 employees in the police, line employees?
So we did, unfortunately, we did lose 2 positions. We lost the 2 commander positions, and I don't remember if we talked about this. So our staffing did go down. We did lose the 2 commander positions. I think you're aware, the city did have to do some reductions in staffing across the board, and we weren't, unfortunately, we couldn't be left alone also. We had to give up those positions. So that brought us to 31 sworn positions, so we're currently at 30 with that 1 position open. And that did not, and the reason why it was the commanders, just to kind of reemphasize, we did not want to affect the patrol officer on the street and the officers handling the calls for service. So who that affected was myself and the chief. The commanders are part of the administrative team, so the chief and I have taken on those extra duties so that the officers working the streets and the detectives, it did not affect those staffing levels.
Well, thank you for taking on that added responsibility. I'll ask you, as I asked Deputy City Manager Wilms, is there a modicum for you to look into grants to increase staffing?
Yeah, we look at grants constantly and staffing, very similar to what Deputy City Manager Wilms talked about. We have seen grants in the past for staffing, but comes with some really, really strict restrictions and how to use that and what that staffing looks like. that they really haven't worked for us in applying for those grants. We apply for other grants that help with equipment and putting out specialized details and stuff, but it is dependent upon what some of those requirements are, if there's matching funds for those, and then who's going to maintain those grants and manage those grants, because that is a full-time job for any type of grant, just managing them. So
And I imagine some grants also have sunset clauses in them.
They do.
Where they ameliorate, and then you're supposed to take over.
They do.
Yeah,
It's not, there's nothing out there for a police officer grant for, you get the officer for 20 years or 30 years. Normally, it's for a couple years, and then the department has to look at that. So we have to look at our future budget and what that looks like and where we're at, and if we can take that on by the end of that grant.
Okay. All right, thank you for answering the question. Any other questions for our police officers, our police department? No? All right, we'll move then to the reports, and we call them reports. They can be in any interest, anything of interest to the commissioners at this time. It's called commissioner report, but we expanded a little bit. So who would like to go first on mentioning anything of their personal interest?
Gerald, is that slide deck available?
Yes, and I thought that was supposed to be under the homelessness item.
Okay, well, I was waiting for that slide deck, but I'd be happy to go over it now if that's possible.
That would be up to the chair.
What's the slide deck it consists of?
For the most part, just signage, examples of signage in regards to panhandling.
That's fine, sure. It's gonna come up here, right? There we go.
Thank you. All right, so this is just kind of a brief overview of the panhandling issue. So some of the primary concerns would be it creates, unsafe conditions for pedestrians and drivers and kind of damages public perception. We've all seen kind of people going in and out of traffic. And then there's organized solicitation. So a lot of times I'm not sure that this would necessarily be related to homelessness if it's like an organized effort. So that's, if you see a large group of people on every street corner, often that's exploitive and dishonest, although being dishonest isn't a crime. This is kind of at major intersections, so mainly Palm and Two Bunch. And then there's also a negative impact felt on businesses. And then this is just a brief overview of the panhandling ordinance. I have it here in front of me too if there's any further questions. So the purpose and findings is that solicitation in roadways, medians, and intersections, it's unsafe, it's distracting, and it can increase the risk of accidents. And then also panhandling near shopping centers, restaurants, ATMs, creates discomfort, increases risks for pedestrians and the solicitors themselves. And then there's certain areas where audience would be considered captive, so they can't leave, and that can lead to intimidation and unsafe conditions. And then so it defines a few areas that are specifically restricted under the panhandling ordinance. And it defines public places just for the ordinance. You can panhandle in public places, but it says any location open to the public, including streets, sidewalks, parks, and businesses. And it specifically restricts panhandling near ATMs, banks within 50 feet of fuel pumps, in public parking lots, to motor vehicles, and then also to bus stops, in outdoor dining areas, any lines of people as they would be a captive audience. And then if there's no solicitation signs, of course. And then so it defines aggressive solicitation as anything that's intimidating or threatening, any physical contact that isn't welcome, any use of offensive language, or that kind of blocks the free passage of a person or vehicle. And then in regards to enforcement, it says, this is a direct quote from the panhandling ordinance. It says a violation is punishable as a misdemeanor or infraction chargeable at the city attorney's discretion. So if staff wants to kind of improve enforcement posture and they want to use this as a tool for that, might want to look at enforcement because currently it's discretionary, so there's no kind of specific outline as far as enforcement goes. And then, so I think signs discouraging panhandling would be really good. We saw Doria touch on that a little bit.
Right.
So it'd be practical, low cost, and then I think they would kind of lessen the burden in regards to enforcement on police and security. So I think signs should clearly discourage panhandling. They should state it's illegal in major intersections and medians, and also kind of provide information on alternative ways to donate or other local charities we might have. And so here I collected a few examples of signage just from different cities around the country. I'm particularly warm on the one on the left because it shows cars and vehicles, and I think something like this would be really useful around Palm and Two Bunch. And then also we should encourage business involvement. That's something that she touched on as well. And this is a sign outside Vaughn's. So I think this is a really good example. We want as many businesses doing this as possible. So Vaughn's was just saying, hey, they're not welcome here. Please, don't donate to them. So that kind of hits the root issue of it, is you want to reduce incentives for panhandling, right? So giving, then also discourage it. You're going to be less likely to panhandle next to a sign saying not to do it, right? And so want to educate the public. She spoke a little bit on that as well, so I don't want to repeat too much, but I think we really need to focus on public education campaigns. So probably, when in regards to understanding panhandling, highlight local ordinances and laws surrounding panhandling, explain why we have these, and then focus kind of on safety and public order. Identify common panhandling patterns, so frequent locations where these happen and kind of groups that are engaging in it. And then also promote the resources that we have available. So the hub, Food Now, all of those are great. And then we want to discourage direct donation while also encouraging charitable giving to the other local organizations that we have here. So that's just kind of a brief summary of the issue.
Very good.
But mainly I would like to just see signage around Palm and Two Bunch. I think that would really lead to a lot less of that panhandling, and we wouldn't need, as much enforcement.
Okay. I would agree with you. The Palm Drive corridor would be my first,
Yeah.
the
yeah,
first place I
absolutely.
would start with the signage. I noticed too in the interim period, I think I showed an example of a sign that was up in Cathedral City at a median, and I've seen them pop up around Palm Springs as well.
Yeah.
So it's a proliferating awareness.
Yeah,
of
and
the
costs
businesses.
differ, but I've seen them only costing around like 300 or so. It depends, but that would be relatively low cost.
Right. Would that be, let me go ahead and ask Chief Shaw that. Would that be an appropriate question to approach the traffic engineer or Public Works about getting signages posted at intersections such as Commissioner Cross?
Yeah,
suggested?
I would go with them and look at what restrictions and what requirements are required for what signs can be posted where and the size of that signage.
Okay, we can do that. And I did notice on those signs, and it was curious to me because you cited the municipal code.
Yeah.
And I did that research. Excuse me, I saw that also. There's state laws against it as well.
Yeah.
But when
yeah,
you look at
definitely.
a sign, the only thing that's mentioned is the municipal code. And I'm wondering why the state law isn't referenced in addition to the municipal code underneath it on that signage.
Yeah, there's
That's
also,
just-
state laws on aggressive panhandling, or oftentimes they could even be cited under the vehicle code too.
The
if
vehicle
they're
code,
going
22,
in and out of traffic.
the VC, and it specifically regards to freeways, is what that part of the vehicle code talks about. But it can be extrapolated to public highway pretty easily. I'm sure there's probably case law in that regard, so, good, thank you for that. Any other questions for Commissioner Cross's brief presentation? Do you want to continue this in a future meeting and maybe expand on your presentation?
Yeah, I would like to. I'm not sure if we have kind of the leeway, given this is mostly on homelessness, the current meeting, but I
Yeah.
would like to kind of get into panhandling at another meeting, absolutely.
I would think it would warrant another meeting just because, and as Deputy City Manager Williams mentioned earlier, homelessness is not in and of itself a crime.
Yeah.
And
of
there are
course.
people who are homeless who do not panhandle, and there are people who panhandle who are not homeless.
Yeah, and then also panhandling isn't always a crime too. You do have free
There
speech
is
rights. You
free
can,
speech,
you know,
there is
ask for
non-aggressive
money.
panhandling, that's correct. Mr. Soriano, can we agendize a aggressive panhandling discussion for the October meeting?
Is there support from two?
I would support that.
Okay, motion made and seconded.
My second.
It doesn't need a motion.
Okay,
Noted.
And please title it as aggressive panhandling.
yes, aggressive panhandling, not just panhandling in general, because, again, some panhandling is protected under the First Amendment. Thanks again, and we'll look forward to that discussion. Anybody else want to go?
I just want to say it's nice to be back, and I hope everyone had a good summer, and the presentation by Ms. Wilms was wonderful, and then Caden did a great job right now, so.
Yeah, thank you. I think she did a great job,
Yeah.
especially given all the difficulties. So.
You're right, I mean, it just came right out. She went right.
Computers, you know?
Yeah, and that's about it.
Okay, Mr. Rizzo.
My report, because my appointee likes to hear the reports over the video. So, on July 8th, we met with, Commissioner Cross and I met with the Chief of Police to discuss different approaches that we can take towards the panhandling situation. And we came up with some solutions, and hopefully the agenda will bring us to that conclusion, what we can do. And that was a good meeting. And on October 22nd, we attended the Brown Act and the ethics training. Oh, no, August. I'm thinking about October because it's so damn hot. Yeah.
Maybe you were in October, we just don't know.
Anyway, that was a good session that the city attorney put on for us for the ethics and Brown Act training. I really appreciate that. And let's see if I have anything else to report. And that's all I had to report for summer. Yep, that's it. Thank you.
Just one more comment. I wanted to thank those that showed up and spoke and are aware of the things that we are trying to do for everyone and in helping or directing or whatever we can do. Thank you, and please tell your friends and neighbors to come. We don't serve anything, but we would like to see you here. Thank you.
Okay. Well, the regional Public Safety Committee meetings in which I had been attending, they pulled a fast one on me. They were supposed to have a meeting the second Monday, which is the Monday before our meeting, and then they changed the date. So now it's being held in Palm Desert, I believe, on the 18th. And again, we mentioned with Doria's presentation the need to regionalize the approach to homelessness, as well as other matters that may influence what happens here in Desert Hot Springs. So I'm looking forward to attending that meeting and touching base with them on that and on the homeless issue and on other issues. I haven't gotten a return phone call. We're still working on a presentation by Riverside County's mental health personnel, the ones that operate the outreach teams and things like that. And maybe we can get them to do a brief presentation on their services and how residents here in Desert Hot Springs can access them. I'm working on that. There was one other thing I had to do. And let's see. I was looking for the updated budget, because I do remember, I do have it in my possession, that we looked at the budget for 2021, 22, and 22, 23. But for 2020 and 21, we're now in fiscal 25, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't seen the police budget for the last 2 years. I don't think we got that. We got a piece of it. We didn't get the entire thing. We got the entire thing for the previous 2-year budget, so I thought we could look at it. We don't, whether or not we get through the entire document is up for question. But I was taking a look at it and wanted to make sure that we all had the opportunity to look at it and make input in it or recommendations as we can. So, that's all I have, in the interim.
So if I could just mention, with the budgets, we put all our budgets on our website.
Right, yeah. In this case, it was the last time we had it, it was hand-delivered to us. So, we can we can access it through the website if you choose, or we can have it printed up. It's, either way is fine with me if we want to take a look at that. Okay, thank you for that. That's all I have. Is there anything else for the good of the order by anyone present? Okay, so I'd like to thank our city staff for attending, those that are still in attendance and those that have already left. Okay, our next meeting, as I check our calendar here, it is always the second Thursday of the month here in these chambers. I'm looking at October the 10th at 6 p.m. in these chambers will be the next public safety meeting. To access these meetings and to view them, any meeting going back to 2009, I believe, please visit the city's website at cityofdhs.org. If there's nothing else, we stand adjourned. Thank you and good night.